Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to the NHL Wraparound 25-26 season preview, brought to you by Lugaroo. And when a Zamboni finishes its work on the ice, it's referred to having a clean sheet, and I think we can say the same for all 32 NHL teams as they start from ground zero in their quest for the Stanley Cup coming up next June. But Neil, our guest knows a little bit something about the sheet as we start this preview as the NHL gets set to begin its 109th season of operation.
Yeah, and our guest, of course, has a great podcast. Everybody should listen to it, subscribe, called The Sheet. And Jeff Marek, thanks for coming and doing this show with us again this year. It's always fun. It's always great to see you.
Yeah.
How are things in Canada?
Things are good. Thanks so much for having me on, Vic. That was a very smooth transition from ending the Zamboni. And I always remind people, Vic, tip your Zamboni driver on the way out to transition into my little podcast. So nice to be with you, gentlemen. No shortage of things to talk about. And I'm guessing we're going to talk a lot about decimal points today, because it's kind of like the overriding story so far, right? We thought there was going to be a lot of player movement. There wasn't, but the big story has been the dollars and the cents.
Yeah, this is the first time I think I've received a throw, so we can get into the initial topic. And I think the way to start here is we are in a new era of money in the NHL. Last year, the salary cap was $88 million. This year, up to $95.5. Next year, jumps to $104 million. And then in 27-28, $113.5 million. And when I was looking for a good place to start here, because you've got unrestricted free agents that sign, you got players that sign with their own teams, you've got some young players that have signed ridiculous extensions. So, and maybe there's a few Dollar Tree bargain deals out there along the way. But the best place to start here, Jeff and Neil, is the contract signed a couple of days ago by Kirill Kaprizov in Minnesota. Originally, it was rumored he had turned down 8 years at 16. That money came up to $17 million a year. And when we put that in the scope of the 8-year, $12 million deal by Mitch Marner, and of course, Leon Draisaitl making $14 million, and you kind of look at, well, is Kaprizov better than either of those two players? And how that ripple effect goes to what Connor McDavid is going to get next year when the cap rises. Where do you see this money going, Jeff?
You know, Vic, it's a great question. And you're right. This is unprecedented territory for the NHL. But the one thing that I've been trying to wrap my head around is these are numbers we all have to get comfortable with right now. You know, when you see the Luke Hughes deal in New Jersey and you say 9, you go, whoa. But this is the going rate. Now, as a sidebar there, I'm sure Lane Hutson's representations at Cortex love to see Luke Hughes get $9 million, because now what's Lane Hutson worth? But I think you're right to point out that this is new territory for the NHL, new territory for hockey players as well. I, like you, Vic and Neil, I'm curious to see what the cascading effect is going to be on the Jack Eichels, on the Kyle Connors, and Kyle Connor might be the sort of the best A to B comparable with Kaprizov, since they're both wingers. Your question about McDavid is a really interesting one, and I almost exclude McDavid from this conversation about high salaries. And as we know, like Neil will tell you, like getting raises, a lot of it is about timing and when you hit and when your contract is up. Are we saying that Kirill Kaprizov's the best player in the NHL? No. Is he one of them? Yes. But right now he's the most highly compensated one. To the point about McDavid, it feels as if Connor is he's really trying to thread a difficult needle here. And that needle is, I need money that takes care of me and rewards me fairly for what I've done here, whether it's, help get the team to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row, the individual trophies, the awards, the goals, the assists, the points, the all of it. Yet at the same time, leave some flexibility here with the Edmonton Oilers so that they can still take a couple of more whacks at the Stanley Cup pinata. So that one is a really interesting and nuanced thread that McDavid and his camp are going through right now. As Jeff Jackson, who's the CEO of hockey operations for the Oilers, told me in the summer, he said, it's not a negotiation with Connor. It's not. Connor McDavid will call us and tell us what he wants. Like that's the way this conversation is going to go. And you can count on one hand the amount of players that have been able to do that in their careers. But Connor McDavid finds himself in that situation. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a situation where McDavid looks at Kaprizov and says, I'm $2 million better than him, and that's what I want, or I'm $1 million better than him. I think he still has that Stanley Cup dream in the back of his mind and wants to make sure the Oilers can remain competitive. I do wonder, though, Vic and Neil, if Kyle Connor in Winnipeg, much to the chagrin of Kevin Sheffield-Dayoff, was probably looking at an $11 million deal, maybe 12, and how much the Kaprizov deal has now juiced that conversation.
Neil, I want to follow up in terms of term and also potential money, because McDavid can still sign for 8 years with the Oilers up until when the new CBA kicks in next September. And we have talked off camera about the potential of him making the 20% that is the cap for one player. And next year, could he make $20 million a year? And at the same time, also looking at term for McDavid, because Leon Draisaitl is starting an 8-year deal this year, but Evan Bouchard signed for only 4 years at $10.5 million. So if McDavid stays in Edmonton, how much term do you think he's going to really want? Is he going to go the full length, or is he going to kind of want the off ramp somewhere in the middle of, say, maybe 3 and 8 years?
As Jeff said about him, it's going to be whatever he wants and whatever he sees for himself going forward. Stan Bowman has got himself in a tough situation. I think he had himself in a tough situation in Chicago. It wasn't his fault. He was just the first one to the dance that won the cups during this new era of the cap. And everybody sort of watched what happened in Chicago and tried to make adjustments so that didn't happen to them when their teams became good. They got themselves in some trouble. They had to offload a lot of good players just to keep up with the cap and with the star players they had. And I think that's going to be the difficulty in Edmonton for the Oilers, is to put this whole thing together and still have a real good team. We all know that the Florida Panthers are deep. They're a deep team. They've got their stars at the top end, but they're very deep. They can beat you with their third line, their fourth line. Their number 4, 5, and 6 defensemen are good. If you give all your money to 2 or 3 guys, you're not going to have the quality depth that you need to, particularly in the playoffs. So it's going to be, Jeff talked about a tough needle for McDavid to thread. I think it's going to be an even tougher needle for the management of the Oilers to thread. And I don't want to hang it on Stan Bowman. He just has the title of GM. But their whole organization is going to have to, really think hard as to where do we want to go with this? Because, I don't know, Jeff, my era was so different than this. And when you do comparables, are they still doing comparables the way we used to do them? For example, like Dobson gets this deal in Montreal, which blew me away. Okay, because I've seen Dobson play 100 times. And I just start thinking, well, God, if Dobson got that, what's so-and-so going to get? And what's so-and-so going to get? And
yes.
you know, the comparables still work the same way. We had Elliot Freeman on here who was terrific with his insights. And he said, well, it's sort of just now you're worth what somebody will pay you. Well, that's always been the case. But you know what? In my day, if you overpaid a guy, about 5 minutes later, you got a call from somebody bitching at you about why did you give him that much money?
Okay, Neil, let me pause on this for 1 second. Vic, I think you'll like this story. Were you at the managers meeting where Bob Gainey and Serge Savard almost got in a fist fight over a player that Savard had signed with the Habs that was going to cost Bob Gainey in his negotiations with someone else? I think it might have been Gary Bettman's first managers meeting as commissioner of the NHL. Brian Burke was working with the NHL at that point, and Bettman turned to him and said, Brian, like, what's going on here? Because people are like, managers, like your colleagues, Neil, are like pulling away tables and chairs, and Gainey and Savard are rolling up their sleeves. And Brian says, well, Gary, you're going to see a fight. And cooler heads prevailed, but like we all know, there was never any love lost between Gainey and Savard, and it played itself out over a contract, to your point, Neil, that the Montreal Canadiens had signed, which was going to make it more difficult for everybody else. And this is why I mentioned off the top, like, these are all numbers we're going to have to get comfortable with. Like, you're right. When you see like 9.5 for Noah Dobson, for a lot of people, like, the first thought is like, wow, that's an incredible amount of money. But then I catch myself and I say, do you remember when there was that slew of players? It was Nathan McKinnon and Johnny Gaudreau and Morgan Riley. All these guys signed for 6. And we all said, wow, these young players are getting that much money. Those all turned into like the best value contracts in the NHL. So given what Vic was talking about and how the salary cap is going to rise, I don't know that we necessarily just look at the number as much as we should probably pay more attention to percentage of the cap. That's probably the more, I know it's not as exciting and easy to digest, but percentage of cap, you know, is probably the more salient number to look at. But I'm with you. Like, some of these numbers are it's just, we got to get out of our comfort zone of, we're comfortable with certain numbers and uncomfortable with other ones. And we're going into shock territory right now.
And that percentage of the cap is exactly what I'm speaking about. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I read where I think Kaprizov's number is 16% of the cap. I think his new contract would be 16%. It doesn't sound like a lot of the cap, right? Well, you know, you got 84% to fill in the rest of the team.
Yep.
But, you know, that is the right way to look at it, like you're saying, because if you end up with 50% of your cap is already spent and you've got to put 75% of your players get 75% of your players signed, the math doesn't work. Yeah,
it's interesting, hey, because, and you know, this is your territory here, Neil. In some ways, the job as general manager is easier than ever because of the new CBA and how everything is very rigid, and you know, the box that GMs work with is getting smaller and smaller. Yet on the other hand, it's becoming more and more difficult too, as far as roster composition and as far as building teams. So there's a really interesting dynamic here, in that generally, like, the art of the general manager, I've always maintained, sort of in this era, isn't what it used to be. Way more rules, you know, salary caps within salary caps. And so in some ways it's more difficult, and in some ways it's easier than ever.
As we know, not all of these contracts work out. And we've already mentioned Mitch Marner and, of course, other big names to move on to new teams. Nikolai Ehlers and Keandre Miller in Carolina. Neil mentioned Noah Dobson, Gavrikov in New York, JJ Peterka in Utah. Guys that have stayed with their clubs. Certainly Bill Zito keeping the triple in Florida with Bennett and Brad Marchand, Eric Ekblad, Matthew Nyes and John Tavares staying in Toronto. Brock Besser which everybody I think thought was leaving. He winds up staying in Vancouver for another 7 years. There's Morgan Geekie in Boston, Trent Frederick in Edmonton, Brock Nelson in Colorado, 3 years at $7.5 million. You've got some real eye openers here also. The Frank Nazar deal for 7 years that will kick in next year at 6.59. Logan Stankoven starts.
That one opened the eyeballs. How many games has he played?
He is making more money than any player in NHL history, given his level of experience. And you look at that deal, Stankoven in Carolina, McTavish in Anaheim, Coronado in Calgary. So, Neil, I'm going to start with you, because when we were preparing this show, you said, you know what? I want to take a look at some of these albatrosses here. So is there any of those names that stick out and say, hey, you know what? This is just going to blow up in the team's face because they're going to wind up having to buy these players out?
You know, if you talk about an albatross, Jeff and Vic, and give an example of an albatross, first of all, so that people know what we're talking about. And my first one I would turn to is Wade Redden with New York, back 6 years, $6.5 million, and ends up making most of it playing for the Hartford Wolfpack. Nothing against Wade. He's a good guy. But I mean, his contract ended up being an albatross for the Rangers in a different era. And that's what we're talking about here. Jeff, we're trying to, I'm trying to look at what contract ends up being a contract that it could get you fired at the end of the day, because it's such an albatross for the organization. And I don't know, the one I'm most skeptical about in all of these, huge contracts that have gone out this summer is Gavrikov. And the reason I say Gavrikov is because, not that New York doesn't have the money and all the rest of it, and they rarely have a real albatross because they find ways to come up with more money, but his knee is uninsurable. He's a guy that Rangers took on even with this really bad knee that he's got, that he had in Columbus, that he's had in LA. And I just don't see that going the distance. What was it? 7 at 7, something
7 million,
like that.
Yeah, 7 million.
Yeah. So that's my pick for an albatross is that one. I mean, there's plenty that you could say could end up being a real albatross for the GM. And we already talked about Dobson and where that's at, but I don't, Noah Dobson will play out the years. I mean, he may be overpaid at some point, but not horribly overpaid. The guys that really become the albatross are the guys, in my view, that can't play. That just, for whatever reason, their play either goes down so badly, or they're just physically can't play. And I don't know, Jeff, if you've got a guy in here.
It's a really, first of all, I love that you brought up Wade Redden, and you're right. Like he played like the majority of that contract in the American, I thought it was a majority, but he played a large part of that contract in the American Hockey League. You know what the sunny side of that story is?
What's that?
He got a raise by getting sent to the American Hockey League. He made more money going to the AHL because he wasn't paying escrow, because he wasn't in the National Hockey League. So you can make the argument that, there's the game of hockey and then there's the game of hockey. Wade Redden won the game of hockey. He didn't pay escrow, right? Because of that $6 million AAV. That was it. That was in Hartford. So bless him. Wade Redden put more money in his jeans getting sent to the American League.
And from what I understand, he was very generous with his money to his teammates in Hartford. Yes. He took those guys everywhere and did things.
Yes.
Vic, this is why I love having Jeff on, because I learn things every time I'm on a show with Jeff. I didn't know that about Wade Redden, but go ahead with an albatross if you would.
You're right. Like taking guys out to dinners, like all the time. Like the guys loved having Wade Redden around, and you're right, one of the best guys of the game. There's a couple of different things. Like one, okay, so as far as potential albatross contracts, I mean, we don't know until they play. Yeah. But listen, what was part of the conversation around Kirill Kaprizov? The hospital bracelet. This guy has a hard time staying healthy through an entire season. And the Minnesota Wild just got out of a very uncomfortable cap situation with the long-term buyouts of Suter and Parise. And maybe, unless he can stay healthy, because listen, when Kirill Kaprizov is healthy, look out. That guy sells tickets. That guy's exciting. That guy scores goals. Like, he's such a dynamic player. But if he can't stay healthy, does that contract become the albatross? Like, we're talking about it as being, setting a new bar in the NHL, and it has. But the flip side of that is too, like, he has difficulty making it through an entire season. So that could be the one. I don't mind, like, I understand that the Frank Nazar contract was a whopper. And by the way, good on Kevin Magnuson, who's the agent there. So he's just started his own company, and Nazar is the first sort of whopper that he signed. So I feel really good for Kevin Magnuson. There's going to be a lot resting on the shoulders of Matt Coronato in Calgary, as they're probably going to have a stripped down season and turn more of their attention to their young players. I really like Logan Stankoven, and I don't think that $6 million is too much. But at the same time, like, Neil, this from your work as a manager, you either reward for past performance or you prospect. You say, I think that Logan Stankoven is going to be this type of player in X amount of years. Ditto for Frank Nazar. And I wonder with Nazar how much that incredible performance of the World Championships last year for USA really warmed the Chicago Blackhawks to knowing that they've got something special here. So I think if we're looking for albatrosses, might just be the biggest one that we just saw signed. Maybe it's Kirill Kaprizov. Nothing to do with the talent, but just everything to do with the health. The thing about the Rangers with Gavrikov that I will throw in, for the longest time, last year specifically, Gavrikov and Mikey Anderson were the best shutdown pair, with all due respect to the top pair in New Jersey. I thought they were the best shutdown pair in the NHL. And you look at the New York Rangers, and I think they're sick of giving up the high danger scoring chances. There's only so many games that Igor Shesterkin can bail them out and give them a chance. I think that was their MO this offseason. Chris Drew's like, I need someone that can help limit the high danger chances in front of, maybe the best goaltender in the world. So I think that was the motivation behind that one.
I just love that you brought Kaprizov full circle for us. And before we move on to head coaches to end the first half of our show, I want to go to the other end of the spectrum here with potential bargains. And add your own name here. I've got Brent Burns in Colorado, $1 million for 1 year with potential $3 million in bonuses. Corey Perry, I think, is a guarantee to make the finals. So that's good news for the Kings, because they'll finally be able to get to the Oilers, because he's been to the finals, 5 times in 6 years. He signed for 1 year at $2 million. And how about Jonathan Taves in Winnipeg? $2 million for 1 year with a potential $5 million in bonuses. So are these three of the best potential bargains out there? And if not, add a name.
Can I add a defender?
You absolutely can.
Aaron Ekblad at $6 million. On the open market, whether it's Utah or Detroit, or pick another destination that he was rumored to go. Like, I really thought that Utah was going to be the destination. The first pair was going to be Sergachev and Ekblad. Like, that's the way it was looking for a lot of us. Like, this was going to head. You got a first pairing defenseman at $6 million. That is some remarkable work by Bill Zito. And look, there's a lot of things that go together to make that happen. The success, the no state tax, the consistent winning, all the comfortability, not wanting to move, wanting to move all your stuff. There's a lot of that goes in there. I mean, the Bennett deal, the Marchand deal. I mean, you could take that three-headed monster and say there's exhibit A, B, and C of some of the best value contracts in the NHL today. But I'll put Aaron Ekblad at the top of that list. I mean, right shot, first pairing defenseman, that carries a price tag, and it's significantly higher than the $6 million he's getting from Florida. I'll throw Ekblad in there as far as value deals.
Neil?
I think you're right, Jeff. And I hadn't thought that way, but certainly the thing you got to love about the Panthers, I'll just say this real quickly, is they really want to win. They want to be together. They are leaving money on the table. There's no doubt about it by staying in Florida and staying with the Panthers. Aaron Ekblad, who was, rookie of the year at 18 years old in the NHL, started with a bang, but then, was like a non-playoff player year after year after year. And now all of a sudden has become a Stanley Cup winner. And I think you're right. I think him and his family must have just said, look, we love it here. We've always been here. Where the hell else are we going to go? We don't want to be anywhere else, even though it would mean more money. But I guess it also underlines the what I said earlier, which is about Noah Dobson at 9 point something in Montreal. And you've got Aaron Ekblad in Florida at 6.
Yeah.
Noah Dobson making $9 US in Canada, which means it's 30% more. You know better than I do. You live in Canada.
So can I pause on this really quickly here? This is a really good point that Neil's got us to, and here's why. $17 million for Kirill Kaprizov. Outside of California and New York, that is, as to my understanding, the highest taxed state in the U.S. If Kirill Kaprizov signs the same contract in Florida with the Panthers, it's $14 million. And how much different is the conversation right now around Kaprizov and Ekblad and McDavid if that contract is signed in Florida and not Minnesota? Like there's a lot of different variables that go into all these deals. He just happens to play in one of the higher tax states in the United States. And that's why the number 17, which when you look at take home money is 14, I think it's 14.2 or 14.3 with the Florida Panthers. The conversation changes, right? The conversation is completely different. I'm really glad you got us there, Neil. I think that's a really good point.
My bargain basement guy, but I'm biased. I will admit I like Brent Burns as a guy. I played some hockey with him every summer in Vegas when we played in Jerry Bruckheimer's tournaments. But I think Brent Burns, even at the age that he is such a good player for Colorado and will be so good for them. I just think he keeps himself in incredible shape and is a great leader and for the younger guys in the locker room. When you see a guy at 40 come in like this, it's sort of like the Chris Chelios type guy that comes in and just killer shape at 40 years old. What does a 20-year-old who's not in as good a shape say? Like, oh my goodness, this guy could be my dad.
The interesting thing about Burns is too, and we've seen this, like the Carolina Hurricanes. I'll just be blunt. There's no team that shines up defensemen better than Carolina, right? Nobody shines D better than the Carolina Hurricanes. And then players go elsewhere. And it's not that they're different players, but they're just not playing in a system with a group of players that is focused around making the defense look good. You can look at Brett Pesce, who's still a really good defenseman. You can look at Brady Shea. Like there's a list of players that have left Carolina with great underlying numbers because that's what they do. But then they get somewhere else and they look different. And that's why I'm really curious to see what happens with Keandre Miller in Carolina, because that seems like someone that Rod Brindamore can really sink his teeth into. Physically strong, athletically gifted, hard worker, and the Carolina Hurricanes have the ability to put a real polish on defensemen. That's the one that I look at and say Carolina may come out the big winner because that's what they do with defenders. Sylvain Lefebvre has done a great job with the Florida Panthers doing that, and the evidence is all in front of all of us. But I'll put the Carolina Hurricanes in that conversation too.
It'll be interesting to see how Miller plays in Carolina for another reason too, in that he's going from probably the biggest market to one of the smallest, being in Raleigh. So in Raleigh, there's not going to be the distractions that there was in Manhattan for Miller, and that will probably serve him well, being in that smaller, tighter environment.
A little bit of a quieter market. Not every turnover gets plastered all over the highlights.
Yeah.
Every tiny little mistake. I'm always of two minds about this because I always say to myself, a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens or the New York Rangers, like a team like NHL teams that are top of mind in their market, you can make the argument that, some players don't want to play there because of the spotlight. Meanwhile, like every team in the NHL would love to have that kind of spotlight where there's no such thing as a small story. Like we always laugh and try like, oh, every tiny story is a big story. Every market wants that. Trust me, Carolina wants that. Columbus wants every market. Florida Panthers are starting to get that now, and the franchise value is starting to grow because of it and because of the Cups. But make no mistake, you're right. It's a quieter market. But given their druthers, I'm sure Tom Dundon would say, I really want this market to be louder. I want this market to be louder.
But Rod Brindamore doesn't want it to be louder because he wants to work on his players and have everything quiet. So, yeah, you're right. You've got a difference there. You've got an owner that would love to have the Toronto Maple Leafs microscope, but you've got a coach that says, no. Just let us work alone here. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain.
Good time to transition off of all the free agents, all the movement, and I thought we did a great job scrubbing that down. But now let's go behind the bench because 9 of these markets have new head coaches to start 25-26, 8 new head coaches last year, 6 in 23-24, and 10 in 22-23 to give this some scope. So 2 of these head coaches have combined for 5 Stanley Cups, and we've got 3 first-timers. The 2 Stanley Cup winners, Joe Quenneville in Anaheim and Mike Sullivan with the New York Rangers. The 3 newbies, Marco Sturm in Boston, Dan Ruse in Pittsburgh, and Adam Foote in Vancouver. And the other coaches are Jeff Blashill in Chicago, Glenn Gulletson in Dallas, both of those who have appeared on NHL Wraparound, and Rick Tocchet moves from Vancouver over to Philadelphia. So quickly, Jeff, of those 9, who makes the biggest impact on team improvement for 25-26?
I think you've already seen it with one of the coaches, and that's Joel Quenneville. Joel Quenneville, one, is an excellent coach, going to the Hockey Hall of Fame, no doubt. But is not just a good coach, like a good hockey coach, but is also a good recruiting coach, right? Like when you have someone like Joel Quenneville on the bench, Neil can tell you this one, all of a sudden, whether it's, most recently Chris Kreider, you look at players that all of a sudden are saying to themselves, you know what, I'm willing to waive my no trade to go to Anaheim. I may not have thought of Anaheim before, but I'm willing to waive my no trade to go to Anaheim so I can be coached by Joel Quenneville. Like that, the Quenneville hiring outside of what he's able to do on the ice, I think is part of a great recruiting tool that Pat Verbeek has here. I think Quenneville helps, right? Like, listen, I think Sullivan helps the Rangers, but I think the biggest impact is that team that's right on the cusp and ready to take that next step. Are they going to be a playoff team? Oh boy, that's still a big jump for the Anaheim Ducks. But they have a lot of, high level players at a lot of high level places. And you have a coach that went through something similar with the Chicago Blackhawks team that had, Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook and Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane and young players and taking the next step and mixing in with veterans. It's tough not to see the symmetry between the two. So I'll out of all that collage of coaches, I'll take Joel Quenneville as having the biggest impact. The other thing, can I just transition and try to draw an arrow between 2 conversations here? With the rise of the salary cap, I really do wonder here, guys, if we start to see teams more patient with coaches. I mean, there used to be a feeling like before you fired a coach, you owed the coach a trade. Like, how many times have you said that, Neil? Oh, you know what? I want to dust the coach, but okay, I owe him a trade first. And in a flat cap system, trades are really hard to make. And that's why we've seen so many coaches walk the plank. We can't make a deal. We got to shake it up. Deals are so hard to make right now. We're going to fire the coach. I wonder now that we're going into a situation where there's more room in the salary cap, if we start to see fewer coaches punted. Would that make sense for you guys?
It does make sense to me because you're going to see the manager have other things he can do other than fire the coach. I can't remember who I'm thinking about, but there is somebody in my head that I'm thinking about that I directly said, well, the manager had no other moves that he could make, so he fires that poor guy. It wasn't really his fault, but he gets fired anyway.
It happens, yeah. Absolutely. And that's why, it's funny too, when the salary cap came in, I remember one coach said to me, This is back in 2005, guy said, like, this is bad for coaches. I said, what do you mean? He goes, we have a salary cap now. It's going to be hard to make trades. A lot of it's going to be money in, money out. Who do you think walks the plank if things don't work out well? It's no longer move players. It's fire the coach. And we've seen that year after year. Vic, you just rattled off a laundry list of all the new coaches in the NHL. And that's kind of the way that it's been.
Vic, I want to mention one thing because we can't leave out Lane Lambert in Seattle. I would feel bad if his name doesn't get mentioned.
Yes.
We didn't mention his name.
My bad. Yep.
And I helped draft him for the Detroit Red Wings with Steve Yzerman back in 1983. So I got to make sure Lane gets his due.
It's good to see him get that spot. He's been up for head coaching jobs before. I believe he was up for Anaheim before Cronin got it. He's been interviewed by a number of teams and has been always been a very highly thought of coach. Absolutely.
Neil, who's your big impact guy behind the bench this year?
Well, I think that my friend Jeff convinced me that it's Joel Kenville. I think that
I made my case.
You did make a good case there, solicitor. I think Sullivan will have a positive impact on the Rangers, even though I'm just going to say it. I don't understand why Sullivan escapes the 3 years of non-playoffs in Pittsburgh. Never gets mentioned that it's anything to do with him. He's like Teflon. It's everybody else's, I guess. But anyway, I regress. I think there'll be some really good jobs done. I think Blashill is a good pick for Chicago. I think Glenn Gulutzan is a good pick for Dallas in Glenn Gulutzan 2.0. We'll see. But I think those guys, Kenville will have the biggest impact. And I also think that Anaheim and the moves they've made and the maturity of their younger players, they're positioned to have a real good year. Whether that means the playoffs or not, I don't know. But I think they'll be one of the surprising rising teams this season.
By the way, the coaches between Gulutzan 1.0 and 2.0, Lindy Ruff, Ken Hitchcock, Jim Montgomery, Rick Bowness, and Peter DeBoer. So he's certainly probably inheriting the best club as he starts his second stint in Dallas. But let's go to the other side of this. Coaches on the hot seat. Jeff, I'll start with you.
I think there's a couple right off the bat, and one of them, unfortunately, was one we just most recently hired by the Vancouver Canucks, and that's Adam Foote. There's a lot riding on this season with the Vancouver Canucks. And they cannot afford to have a miserable start. If it's like, they're 2-8 to start the season, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable questions because then all of a sudden the Quinn Hughes conversation will fire up. And if the team is 2-8, that means that Elias Pettersson hasn't taken a step forward. But the other one, and I know that Barry Trotz really doesn't want to do this, and he didn't want to do it last year and he didn't, but I do wonder about Andrew Burnett. With the Nashville Predators, this is a team that has spent a lot of money on a lot of players and are not getting their return on investment. Barry Trotz has talked about this, and he's an ex-coach himself. He does not want to hang this all on Andrew Burnett, but there's only so long that you can do that. And if you're going to need to shake up a roster again, like we just talked about, it's probably the path of least resistance. And again, if Nashville has a poor start, or if again Nashville doesn't make the playoffs this season, it could be tough times for Andrew Burnett. Those would be the two.
Neil,
I think Jim Hiller's in the soup, because if he doesn't get his team going, I think Ken Holland, who's brand new, who endorsed Jim Hiller, had to endorse him when he got there, is going to give him the rope that he needs to prove that he's a good coach. But you've got a guy lurking in the background there named Peter DeBoer, and I think there's going to be a sweepstakes that what manager says, okay, my finger is a little bit itchy to pull the trigger here because I can get Peter DeBoer to come in and replace my guy. I just think it's, he's sitting there and somebody's going to recognize that. The other guy that has to prove this year that he's going to make his team improve significantly and at least be in that wild card conversation all season is Tourné in Utah.
Yep.
They've been very loyal to him. He's in for good reason. He had some tough days when he had his the Coyotes, and then he's moved over to Utah. I think done a pretty good job there. But this is the big year. They made some good moves. They've got some maturing young guys that are really going to come through this year, I believe. And he's going to have to be in that conversation all season, or I think he could be in trouble.
Tourné, in his 5th year, has never made the playoffs, so it's about time for him. And, of course, Hiller probably still having to answer for that ill-advised challenge, which really flipped the opening round series against the Edmonton Oilers last year. Plenty more to come, but first, a word from our friends at Lugaroo. There's a brand born in hockey locker rooms that now outfits the majority of pro sports teams across North America. It's called Lugaroo. Lugaroo makes performance apparel for every moment of an athlete's day. The early lift, the morning skate, the flight to the next city, or dinner after a win. Quiet, technical, built to last, no noise, no ego. If you're the guy who shows up early, stays late, and doesn't need applause, this is your uniform. The cut is sharp, the details deliberate, and the gear holds its shape when the day gets heavy. Hockey players choose it because it supports the work between shifts, the hours that actually decide the game. Check out Lugaroo at lugaroo.co. That's LOOGAROO.co. And use the promo code Wraparound and you'll get free shipping. More than ready, Lugaroo. Welcome back to NHL Wraparound's 2025-26 season preview. Vic Morren, Neil Smith, and pleased to be joined by the host of the Sheet Podcast, Jeff Marek. So as we move forward here, let's talk some breakout skaters. And you can add a goaltender here if you'd like. I think I picked last year Wyatt Johnson on Dallas, Kirill Marchenko on Columbus, and Owen Tippett in Philly. And I think Marchenko was the best of the three, followed by Johnson in the regular season, and Tippett didn't have a really good year. So I'm going to start off here. And my breakout player, I have a goalie, and I've got a skater. I'm going to start with the skater. And I'm looking at Juraj Slafkovsky in Montreal, who I believe really emerged and showed some power forward potential. He was the first round pick, first overall, 2022, career high 51 points last season, finished in the plus with a +4. I see him for 35 goals this year. And my goalie, Lukas Dostal in Anaheim. I think with the move of John Gibson over to the Detroit Red Wings, gives Dostal the opportunity to step in. He's in a great environment, as you had said earlier, Jeff, with Joe Quenneville there. I think all the pieces are in place for him to win 35 games this year. So those are my breakout players.
Jeff, why don't you go next?
Okay, so first of all, those are some great picks from last year, Vic. Well done, bravo. Take a bow. Especially Kirill Marchenko, who may be on the best value contract in the NHL. Holy smokes, is that guy legit? As far as breakout players, I want to throw two, and I'm going to stick with Columbus here. And I'll focus on Adam Fantilli, who's poised to, top 15 score, dare we say top 10. When you look at all the production for Fantilli last year, and the one thing that Fantilli has been able to do, like he came out of college at Michigan, and this happens to kids like all the time. Mm-hmm. He only played one way, super fast. Everything was super fast, super fast, super fast, super fast, super fast. And as you guys know, playing in the NHL, you cannot be predictable. If you're a predictable player, that is a recipe for failure. What he's been able to do, and they've gone, and Dean Evison and Don Waddell have done a lot of work with him to change up his game. he is a much more dynamic and versatile player now. And you look at all the scoring down the stretch last season, and it wasn't like he was getting, picking up power play cookies. It's all like 5-on-5. To me, Adam Fantilli is poised to have that breakthrough, plant the flag, I have arrived type season. I'll say the same thing about Logan Cooley with Utah as well. Like, he's right on the cusp and ready to take that next step. I like your Slafkovsky pick as well. He'll be playing on one of the top lines in the NHL with Suzuki and Caulfield. You stole my goalie pick. So in the spirit of trying to keep things spicy, listen, we saw Dustin Wolf plant a flag last year with the Calgary Flames. I really do wonder if Jet Greaves in Columbus can be that guy this year. It seems as if Columbus really wants him to have a significant role on this team. They traded Daniil Tarasov to the Florida Panthers to open up that spot. And I think that they'll provide enough runway for him to take the number one position away from Elvis Merzlikins, and then it's over to the general manager to see what he wants to do. But as far as breakout netminders, I'll take Jet Greaves.
Smith, you're going to really be challenged here.
Sorry, we're gobbling up the good ones here.
That's okay. That's okay. My breakout forward that I believe is going to have last year I picked Clayton Keller, Vic, on our show.
That's right.
And I'm going to pick one of his teammates again, and that's Dylan Guenther. The guy can shoot the puck unbelievably. He's a great goal scorer. I think he's going to break out this year, and we're really going to know who he is by the end of the season, or everybody's going to know who he is by the end of the season. The other one might be a little bit obvious to you guys, but I'm going to go with it anyways, and that's Matt Nyes in Toronto there, Jeff, where you are. Got the big contract. He was a guy that was just outside that core four last year, and now I think he's part of the core four this year with Marner moving on to Vegas. I think he's just going to have a great year. I think his attitude is, from what I read and the comments that he makes, he's got a great attitude. He's something that Toronto really needs. They need that big body power guy and not another skill guy. So I say Matt Nyes. And for a goaltender, and I wasn't ready for a goaltender, but you two guys all came up with one, so I have to come up with one. And I'll say that's you know the old expression, once a king, always a king, but once a knight's enough. Anyway, I'll pick Spencer Knight. Spencer Knight, one of the players that it's really easy to cheer for. I'm with you on Spencer Knight. And you know what? He's got some pressure. I mean, he got traded for Seth Jones. Seth Jones ends up, what a marvelous playoffs he had for a guy who'd never been on a contending team, hardly even been on a competitive team. And people wondered whether he could win or not. And boy, did he show that he can win. He was there. He was great. Him and Ekblad. Anyway, Vic, that's my guys. Matt Nyes, Dylan Guenther, and Spencer Knight.
We'll be checking back with you in April. But before that, we're going to let you, Neil, because you went last year and you still managed to fill in the blanks really well. Power shifts. So who are your teams on the rise, and who is ripe to slip on the banana peel and go backwards?
I think that the aforementioned many times already on the show, Anaheim Ducks are on their way up. I think that's something that I thought even before the show, guys. I just didn't do that because of what's been said. I actually think that the Buffalo Sabres are on their way up and may even, God help me for saying this, they may even make the playoffs, which I know is unheard of. I just think they're going to take some strides. I don't know if they'll make it or not, but I think they're going to make some strides finally. The team that I see slipping, I hate to say it, Montreal Canadiens. I don't think they're as good as they ended the season. And if they think they're better than they are, they could be in trouble and slip backwards. Sometimes, they got into the playoffs as a -20 last year. I don't know. That's the one I had to pick one. That's the one I picked.
That's it. First of all, a quick comment on Montreal. I don't think that's a controversial take at all, because what's the one thing that Montreal had last year that is the envy of a lot of other teams in the league? Health.
Yeah.
You look at, a couple of years ago, the Vancouver Canucks came out of quote unquote nowhere and went on a little run, and it was because they were healthy. I mean, there's more to it, but Montreal was healthy last year. Are they going to go through another season clean? That's hard. Nobody gets out clean in the NHL. Like it's a tough 82 game a season grind. So I don't think that's a controversial pick at all. Teams on the rise. We've talked a lot about Anaheim, so enough about them. We'll park them. I think this is the year that Utah makes it in. I think this is another year where they either come really close or they finally get over that hump, and that is Columbus. I think they have a lot of big pieces at a lot of big positions, and I think that they're very well coached. And I think that's a team that's right there in an improving metropolitan division, let's say. As far as teams that are going to take a slide back, I know they've got Swayman and McAvoy and Pasternak, and I do love Geeky, but I think it's more tough sledding for the Boston Bruins. I really do. I still, no one really loves them down the middle. You wonder if, come trade deadline, we're talking about moves for Pavel Zacha. I think that the team that's going to slip out of it, which is weird because this is new territory for the Boston Bruins going back to when they won the Cup in 2011. It's like death taxes and the Bruins make the Stanley Cup final. This is new territory for their fans, but a team on the slide is probably the Bruins for me.
My 2 cents. Teams on the rise. I see the Ottawa Senators. I think I liked what they did last year. I think getting a taste of the playoffs, getting in, and really throwing a scare into the Maple Leafs in the first round. I think they've matured a lot. I think now that Brady Tkachuk has gotten into the playoffs, he wants what his brother has. And I believe that they will continue a bit of an upward trajectory. And in the Western Conference, you guys have mentioned Anaheim, you've mentioned Utah, and I'm going to throw a little bit of a surprise here. And I think a team that you're going to see steps forward, not make the playoffs, but take a step forward, the San Jose Sharks. And they made a lot of veteran acquisitions and signings during this offseason. I like what Mike Greer has done there. And I think that these players that they have brought in, and there's so many out there, I'm not going to start going through the litany of names, but it's going to augment and help the growth of Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. So I think not even a bubble team, but I think the bottom feeding days of the San Jose Sharks are over. In terms of the teams that are going to slip, and I got one from each conference, I'm going to go opposite of you, Jeff, and I'm going to say Columbus. And the reason being is I think that club had so much adrenaline last season, playing with a purpose after the passing of Johnny Gaudreau. It seemed like that outdoor game against Detroit, that was the turning point of their season. And I question whether or not they are going to be able to have that same sense of intensity and purpose as they did a year ago. And in the West, I think it's the Calgary Flames. They literally did nothing in terms of player acquisition last year. And much like Columbus, they got this right to the end of the season. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to maintain that for another 82-game season. So with that, let's move over to the 8 playoff teams from each conference. But if one team slips up, who has the potential just to sneak into the playoffs? Jeff, I'll start with you.
I think in the Eastern Conference, we're waiting for the Detroit Red Wings, aren't we? Because there are a lot of people in that organization that have blamed all the woes of the Detroit Red Wings on goaltending. Rightly or wrongly, a lot of the blame has fallen on the goaltending. If John Gibson is the answer, if John Gibson can stay healthy, and if some of these younger players can take another step in their young careers. And by the way, Marco, if you're a Red Wings fan, you're pretty excited about Marco Kasper. As everybody looks for a second line set, I need to say Detroit has one in Marco Kasper. This guy looks so good. I wonder about the Red Wings jumping into a spot if any of these teams fall out of it. And of those, I'll go against you on this one, and I'll say I wonder about the Ottawa Senators. I understand the motivation of Brady Tkachuk, and we all understand like how much skill they have. I think Sanderson is one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL. That guy is a flat-out star. I have just never seen the bite down on the mouth guard and gut out a win in any games that Linus Ullmark has played. I want to see like good performances in high pressure situations. And outside of when he played in the Buffalo Sabres organization and Rochester would play Utica, and it would be Linus Ullmark versus Thatcher Demko. That was like the goalie battle that everybody loved in the American Hockey League. I just haven't seen it from Linus Ullmark yet. That's why I think if there's a team that's going to pop out, maybe look for the Red Wings to jump into that spot.
Neil.
I feel like I'm cheating when I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Excuse me, because the Rangers didn't make the playoffs last year. And so you feel like you're cheating saying that I think the Rangers are going to be the ones that's going to make it this year if somebody slips, because I just think they are a playoff team. They've got Mike Sullivan that's going to give them a bit of a shot in the arm. I don't think they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender, but I do think they're going to supplant somebody in the Eastern Conference. They're going to get in where somebody won't get in. On the West, I know we've mentioned Anaheim over and over again. I think they're ripe to surprise everybody and jump up and take a spot if they can't do it. And I think also Utah is right there. Utah needs a little bit more, and they can make the playoffs this year. Who's not going to make it in the West? Jim Montgomery's got to do the magic that he did again last season to get the St. Louis Blues back in again, I think, this year. But he's capable of that. So we'll see.
Just to wrap this up, I agree with you, Neil, about the East with the Rangers getting in instead of the Montreal Canadiens. And the same other 7 clubs, I do believe, make it this year. Carolina, Jersey, Washington, Tampa, Toronto, Florida, and Ottawa. And in the West, I think the top 6, Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, Vegas, Edmonton, and LA. And I agree with you. I think St. Louis is a team that could get nosed out if they don't play the same way that they did a year ago when they pushed their way into the playoffs under Montgomery. And I also could see potentially Minnesota falling backwards, and they won't have Matt Zuccarello at the start of the season, probably for about 2 months with an injury. And that team had a hard time scoring last year. And the 2 teams that I would look to push in, if either of those 2 teams fail, Anaheim and Utah.
Can I throw one thing in real quick? Just that, and this is nothing specific to right now in this program, but just something for you and your listeners / viewers to sort of noodle around in their head.
We like noodling.
Okay, here comes your noodling homework of the day. Every year, there's a 100-point team that misses the playoffs. Who's that team going to be this year? For me, it's the LA Kings. But it happens every year, guys. It happens every year. There's a 100-point team that misses the playoffs. Who's that team going to be?
It's funny.
Just noodling around.
I obviously didn't just mention the Kings before, but as soon as you put that question up, that was the first team that did come to mind for me. So
it is. I know, right?
Yeah.
We'll see. We got 82 games to get the answer. Like you say, Vic, talk to me in April. We'll see. We'll see.
Oh, you'll get full extra credit if that happens. Neil, you got a team?
I don't. I'm sorry. I need more time to think about that.
Say it, Panthers. Say it. Come on, do it.
Come on, be like Sam Kinison. Say it.
Come on, let's go. Yes, that's right. Back to school. I love that. Great reference. I love it. Back to my own heart.
All right. Well, with the Florida Panthers, okay, so the perfect transition here. So the last 4 teams that have gone for a three-peat have all failed since the Islanders won their 4th straight from 80 through 83. 93 Penguins, 99 Red Wings, 2018 Penguins, 2022 Lightning. So the Panthers have this built-in excuse already because Alex Barkov will be out for the entire regular season at least. Matthew Tkachuk out at least 2 to 3 months to start the season. Tomas Nosek will also be out long-term due to a knee injury. So we have posed this question to several other guests along the way here. Injuries were going to be a big factor. But with that, do the Panthers still have enough to complete this three-peat by just being good enough to get in during the regular season and then getting players back potentially along the way? Jeff?
Outside of Sergei Bobrovsky, the one player the Florida Panthers could not afford to lose, they just lost in Alexander Barkov. And everyone's going to get a little bit of a lift here, like Sam Bennett will play a little bit higher, Anton Liddell will play a little bit higher. I wonder if they move Sam Reinhart to center here long term. And even if Barkov comes back, I mean, when you're coming off surgery like this, and you have players that have played an entire season and in the rhythm and the whole deal, what is Barkov going to be like? Given that injury, it may be time to come back from Niagara Falls with the Florida Panthers. Maybe the honeymoon might just be over here. Look, man, winning a Stanley Cup is hard. Winning 2 Stanley Cups is hard. Winning 3 Stanley Cups in a row is near impossible. Let's not forget, too, that they also went to the Stanley Cup final before they ripped off the 2. Somewhere along the way, that catches up to you. It's going to be incredibly difficult to do this. If they can, it's one of the great stories in hockey. I just don't know how to do it without Barkov.
I got to agree with everything Jeff said. First of all, Vic, because you do this with me every day, that I have thought that Florida would have a very tough time, even with all their players healthy, to win, because so many things can go wrong in that third year. And Bobrovsky, as great as he is aging. How long can he keep it going? Can he do it again? That's with everybody healthy. But now when you lose Barkov, who's just a stud of what a great player, and really the backbone of that team. I think actually the coach actually said this team is Sasha Barkov. I think he once said that. Paul Maurice did. I don't think they're going to do it. I'll be cheering for them because I'd love to see, as Jeff said, I'd love to live through one of the great all-time stories would be for Florida to win it. I mean, it's almost a bigger feat. God help me for saying this because all the Islander guys are my friends, but it's almost a bigger feat to win this year and win 3 in a row right now than the Islanders winning 4 in a row when they won 4 in a row, when you kept all your same players for a decade. This is it, but I don't see it happening.
And the commonality between the two organizations, obviously, Bill Torrey. I always love to throw that in because he has been pivotal with the Florida Panthers. The late great Bill Torrey.
Yeah, and Richard Torrey is still a great friend of mine that I get to see in Long Island every now and then, and we worked together way back in 1982.
Neil, ask him to tell the world. Because this is a white whale for me. What did Sam Pollock offer him for the first overall pick that turned into Potvin? Who are the players, Neil? The hockey world is dying to know. Ask Richard. Okay.
I'll ask Rich Torrey.
I think Steve Shutt was one of them, but I'm not 100%. But that's about it. I've been trying to find the 5, and I can't.
Well, we had Scotty Bowman on here, and I think we talked about that. Scotty talked about Sam Pollock and trying to get that pick.
Yep.
That we did. Scotty Bowman, by the way, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but he is as sharp as you're going to find in anybody.
Yep. Love him. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, before we let you go.
Yes, sir.
Stanley Cup final prediction. What do you got?
Vegas Golden Knights, because that top 9 is going to be trouble for everybody. That is a line matchup nightmare for an opposing coach. I'll take Vegas and the Carolina Hurricanes finally get there. Vegas Golden Knights win their second cup in franchise history. Much to the chagrin of Toronto Maple Leafs fans, you'll see Mitch Marner with his name on the Stanley Cup.
Well, I don't think Carolina's going to win it. I can't jump on the bandwagon with my buddy Jeff on this one. I do like Vegas. I think that's a good pick. If you've got to play this game, I think that the game of playing Vegas is a real good pick. And in the East, boy, it's tough. I mean, I'm going to say Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be in the final against Vegas. Vegas wins. I'll go with Jeff, but I think Tampa Bay is going to have a resurgence again this year. I just think I see Florida falling a little bit, and because of what we just talked about, and I think Tampa will get some luck, and which is what you need to win, and they'll get there again.
I'm going to put a bow on this, and my picks are different from both of yours. I'm going to start over in the West, and I think Glenn Gulutzan 2.0 is going to be the tonic for the Dallas Stars. I think they're going to learn from their mistakes. I think they're going to finally get over this losing in the conference finals bugaboo. I like their lineup. They're going to have a healthy Heiskanen. Jamie Benn will get back at some point to lead them as their captain. And I think all of those players that fell short in the conference final against Edmonton last year will finally emerge. They will finally grow into that championship team that I think we've expected for the last several years since they made the final in 2020. And I think they will be the Florida Panthers. And I know this is a surprise because of the injuries that we've already mentioned. And I think, Jeff, your points about Barkov potentially coming back in the playoffs and what type of player he would be, it's all valid. But I also kind of look at Paul Maurice, and I think 2 years ago, prior to him winning the Cup, you would have had doubts. And to me, this just looks like a guy that you handed me a Rubik's Cube, and it's all out of sorts. It's a different challenge, and he's just figuring out how he's going to make it work this year. They did maintain the 3 free agents in Marchand and Ekblad and Bennett, and I just see him figuring out this puzzle. But I do believe that they will fall short against the Dallas Stars.
And Mikko Rantanen gets another Stanley Cup. Much to the chagrin of the Colorado Avalanche and their fans.
Yeah. The Carolina Hurricanes
and the Carolina. I do like that Dallas pick a lot too. I've thought a lot about Dallas, and I think that Dallas is going to be one of those teams that you say, let's have a look at what this team looks like after trade deadline, because I don't think anyone thinks that Jim Nill is done. There's no way. Like, I wonder about Rasmus Anderson. I wonder about Nazem Kadri. Like, take your pick. Like, I don't think that, and this is a go for it year again for Dallas. I don't think Jim Nill takes a back seat. I think he's got 2 hands on the wheel. I think he's gonna he'll massage this team into being the team that they want for the playoffs. That's a great pick.
Right.
It's a great pick.
It's only great if it wins, because I did pick Vancouver to win the Cup last year over Toronto. So we know how that
went. Well, we don't talk about the predictions that don't go well. The ones that do go well. Right. Run the tape. Run that tape back, Vic. Run that tape back.
No, because there's a lot of Nashville on that tape from last year also. So
everybody, listen, they won the Stanley Cup in July last year, right? It was great. We're all talking about how great the Nashville were. Why are we bothering to play the season? Just give it to Nashville. No, I know. Yeah. You don't win. You don't win the Cup in the summer. You don't win the Cup in the summer.
Well, Jeff, this has been great, and hopefully you'll come back at some point. All right.
Anytime. It's been a lot of fun. You guys are awesome. Buzz back anytime. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to hold you to every single one of your predictions, and I expect you to not do the same to me.
All right, buddy.
Fair enough.
Thanks, boys.
You and Jeff Marek go back so many years, and what an absolute perfect guest to have on for the season preview for 25-26.
And such a fun guy and a knowledgeable guy. He's encyclopedic in his recall. Tremendous personality in broadcasting for many years in Canada, and certainly a delight to have on NHL Wraparound.
As we head into the 2025-26 season, a little personal note from both me and Neil that this show actually marked the 200th episode of original content that we have done since January of 2024. And this was merely a concept 2 years ago, and now we're up to 6 franchises. The new website will be up before the start of the season, and September was our best download ever. And a big thanks to our listeners, supporters, and subscribers for really helping make us and this podcast what it is right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Vic. I couldn't say it any better. Without the listeners and subscribers and viewers and people giving us a chance to bring them this information and this content, we wouldn't have a show. But it was a concept way back at the beginning of the 23-24 season. And we started then midway through the season with Wayne Gretzky. And it's been so much fun. And it's just been great. I never, ever dreamed it would be this good as it's been, as far as working with you, the content we've come up with, the tremendous guests that we've had. And it just is such a positive in my life that I've been able to do this.
And to have an entire new season to look forward to starting on October 7th, triple header on ESPN with Chicago at Florida, kicking things off, Pittsburgh at the Rangers, and then Colorado at Los Angeles. So with that, great time to end our show as we look forward to a new season. Special thanks to Jeff Marek from the Sheet Podcast for joining us to help this preview along today. Thanks to our friends at Lugaroo. Please support them. They have great apparel, and many of the teams around the NHL are outfitted by Lugaroo. So please support them at lugaroo.co. That's LOOGAROO.co.
And thanks to the listeners. Don't forget, guys, that are out there, guys and gals, and whoever's listening, send questions, comments, or your email address, if that, only that, so that we can put together a list to Neil at NHLWraparound.com, or if you prefer, Vic at NHLWraparound.com. Our website is being updated and will be out real soon. We're both very excited about that. And New York-centric, a franchise that we've done for the last year. We're now moving that onto the website with a couple of new features that you're going to see on the website. So we're moving that off of the show, NHL Wraparound, and moving that onto the website. So stay tuned for that.
We might drop in a couple of live episodes of that show at some point during the course of the year, but that is going to be written on a weekly basis by our friend and colleague, Patrick Hoffman, who has written for many publications. And so he will be dropping his notes in every week. And like Neil said, there'll be a couple of other features in there. So really excited about this launch, about the 2025-26 season ahead. So ready to go, partner?
I'm ready to go. Excited.
Drop the puck.
Let's go.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.